To do lesson 8.2 on multiplying polynomials. So the previous lesson you learned how to add and subtract polynomials. Today we're going to multiply using two different methods, horizontally using the table or area model and using the FOIL pattern when you have two binomials. So here's your warm-up. Take about 30 seconds to simplify these two expressions, which mean it's getting rid of parentheses and combining like terms. Okay, so number one, you have to distribute the -2 into the parentheses. So -2 times 9a would be -19a, and then -2 times -b would be plus 2b. Since these are not like terms, this expression is simplified all the way, and that would be the final answer. Also, typically you write expressions or equations if they have multiple variables in like alphabetical order, so this would be proper because A comes before B. For number two, note that this is a multiplication symbol, not an addition sign. So whenever you're multiplying powers that have the same base, you add the exponents. So even though they're not the exact same term, they still have common bases. So you can add the 2 here and the 1 here to be r cubed, and then s and the s squared to be s cubed. So r cubed, s cubed would be the answer. Once again, if you have multiple variables in one term, you want to write it in alphabetical order. So r comes before s. So that's how this first set is set up. So these are not really anything that you couldn't do before this lesson, but we are going to review multiplying like x times x. So if I have x times 2x, remember, it doesn't become 3x because when you multiply, you add the exponents. So x times x, let's tell the difference between these. X plus x is equal to 2x. But if you have x times x, that is equal to x squared. Make sure you write that down because this is really important. And if you understand this, then you won't mess it up. So if you distribute the x, you would get 2x squared and then plus 3x. And that's how that's simplified. For part B, if I distribute the x here, well, there's already x squared here, so now it becomes 7x cubed, and then plus 4x. For part C, you're distributing the 2x cubed into each term in the parentheses, so all four terms. So 2x cubed times x cubed would be 2x to the 6, because remember, we're adding the exponents. Only you multiply if you have like x to the third power. When you have a power to a power, then you multiply the powers. But if you have a power times a power, then you add the powers. I like to think of like a little addition sign here. So adding the powers here. Okay, let's continue. So this times that would be 6 because we're going to multiply the coefficients together, x to the 5th. And then the next one would be minus 4x to the 4th. And then the last one, 2x cubed times 5 would be plus 10x to the 3rd. Okay, for this one, very similar. So distribute 3x squared times 2x to the 3rd would become 6x to the 5th because you multiply the coefficients and add the exponents. And 3x to the 3rd minus x squared would become minus 3x to the 4th. 3x squared times 4x would become 12x to the 3rd. And then 3x squared times negative 9 would be that's negative 3. It would be minus 9x squared. Okay, so we are not going to look at that. We are just going to dive into this. So if I have a binomial times a binomial, there are two ways to do this. The first thing we're going to do is use the area model. You may have used this back in elementary school when multiplying numbers together. So if I have x plus 3, I can put that on, well, actually, first of all, area is length times width. So if I, for example, take this as my length and take this as my width, then I can write it as length times width and put the length expression here. Now, since there are two terms, each term gets its own column. So x goes to this column, and the 3 goes to this column. And then I can take my width and put it here. Since the width has two terms, I need 2 rows. If it had 3 terms, I would use 3 rows for each separate term, because we need to make sure we multiply everything in here by everything in here. So I'm going to put the 2x here in the first row, and then the 1 in the second row. If there were negative signs there, I would put the negative with it also. Okay, then I'm going to multiply length and width of each of the individual boxes. So this box would be 2x times x, which is 2x squared. This box would be 2x times 3, which is 6x. This box would be 1 times x, which is x. And this box would be 1 times 3, which is 3. Now we need to add up all of the terms. So I'm going to write them all out down here, and then we will simplify. So 2x squared plus 6x plus x plus 3. Now you need to look for any like terms that you can combine. A lot of times if it's set up properly, your diagonal here will be like terms. Not always, but sometimes. So I see those are both x's. We can add them together to be 7x. So your final answer is 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. Okay, let's do the next one. So this has minus signs in it, so I put the x in the first column and the negative 4 in the second column. So every time I do this, I need to multiply it by negative 4. And then we'll put the 3x in the first row and the negative 2 in the second row. Then I'm going to find the product of each box. So this would be 3x squared. This box would be minus 12x. This box would be minus 2x, and this box would be 8. Then I can add up the terms from highest to lowest power. So 3x squared comes first. Then I see that these two are like terms. If you add those together, you get minus 14x, and then plus 8 at the end. And that would be the final answer. Anytime you need to pause the video, feel free to make sure that you get all of these notes copied down, because I am going through this kind of quickly. So note that now we have 3 term, which is a trinomial, so that means we need 3 columns. So you could put the b squared here, 6b here, and negative 7. 3b for the first row, negative 4 for the second row. And then we'll find our individual terms. So 3b times b squared is 3b to the third. 3b times 6b is 18b squared. And 3b times negative 7 is negative 21b. Then I'm going to do the bottom row. So negative 4 times b squared is minus 4b squared. Negative 4 times 6b is negative 24b. And then negative 4 times negative 7 is positive 28. All right, now highest to lowest power, the 3b to the third would come first. Then notice your diagonals here are the same, so we can combine these. So if you do negative 4 plus 18 or 18 minus 4, doesn't matter what order, that would give you 14b squared. And then also these diagonals are the same. So if you take negative 21, add it to negative 24, you would get minus 45b plus 28. All right. And then finally this one, once again, it has 3-term trinomial and a binomial. So trinomial is going to go on top because it has 3 columns, 5x, negative 1. So we'll set up our boxes. And then this box would be 4x times 2x squared, which is 8x to the third. The next box would be 20x squared. and the next box would be minus 4x. Then this box would be negative 6x squared. This box would be negative 15x, and this box would be positive 3. Then you're going to combine all your like terms from highest to lowest power. So 8x to the third comes first. And then these are at both x squared, so that would add up to 14x squared. And negative 4 plus negative 15 would make minus 19x. And then plus 3. So that's the answer to the last question. Okay, flip your page over for some different examples. So if you don't like this method, or just know that there is another method called the horizontal method. So basically what we're doing when we do the box method is we do this term times this, then we do this term times that, and then you do this term times this, and then you do this term times that, and then you do this term times this, and then you do this term times that. So if you have 3 terms here and 2 terms here, then you have to multiply 6 times. And that's basically what we did here. We just had a box to help us separate all the terms. You don't have to use the box, though, if you don't want to. You can just draw arrows from one term to the next, denoting that you are multiplying that term by everything inside of the second polynomial. So 4n times n would be 4n squared. 4n times 5 would be 20n. And then negative 1, be careful because this is negative 1. So negative 1 times n is minus 1n. Negative 1 times 5 is minus 5. Then you have to combine your middle like terms. So 4n squared plus 19n minus 5. So some of you might prefer to do it this way. Some of you might still prefer to do the other way because it's more organized and you can see the process a little bit better. And you don't have all the arrows going that might get you confused. Okay, for B, same thing, but we're going to have to do it 6 times, where the other one we only did it 4 times. So 2x squared times x, and then x squared times 2. So that would be x to the third plus 2x squared. I'm going to use different colors. So then for 2x, we're doing 2x times x, which is 2x squared, and then 2x times 2, which is 4x. And then we're going to multiply the 1, so that would be plus x and then plus 2. Then you need to add your like terms. So x cubed comes first. These two would add up to 4x squared. These two would add up to 5x, and then the plus 2 at the end. So you can decide on your homework which of these methods you want to do. Okay, we'll do one more. 3y squared times 2y would be 6y to the third. And then 3y squared times negative 3 would be negative 9y squared. Negative y times 2 would be minus 2y squared. Negative y times negative 3 would be plus 3y. And then 5 times, we'll do the 5. So 5 times multiplied by 2y would be 10y. And then 5 times negative 3 is minus 15. Combine your like terms. 6y to the third. Negative 9 minus 2 is negative 11y squared. And then 3y times plus 10 is 13y minus 15. So you can see there's a lot of potential for error here if you don't use the box method because of all of the negative signs. So just be careful if you're going to do it this way. Okay, and there's one last method when you have 2 binomials. It's something that we call the FOIL method. So FOIL is basically the arrows that we were doing in part A. FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. So your first terms, which would be the 4n and the n, multiply those two first. Then you multiply your outer terms first. Then you multiply your inner terms first. And then you multiply the 2 last terms first, so the negative 1 and the 5. So this is just simply an acronym for example 3 part A, those types of questions when you have 2 binomials multiplied together. So you can use FOIL method to keep track. So if you spell it out for first, outer, inner, last, the first term would be 3a times a, which is 3a squared. And then the outer term would be 3a times negative 2, which is negative 6a. The inner term would be 4a, and the last term would be negative 8. Then you're going to add your two middle terms. So that's 3a squared minus 2a minus 8. Once again, this is something that you could use the box method for instead if you still prefer the box method. However, I do want you to do FOIL method for the examples and maybe try a few on your homework using FOIL method just so you know what it is and how to use it. So next, 4b times first, outer, inner, last. So your first would be 4b times b, which is 4b squared. Your outer would be 4b times negative 2, which is negative 8b. Your inner terms are the negative 5 with the b, which is minus 5b. And your last terms are negative 5 times the negative 2, which is plus 10. Add up your two middle terms, and you get 4b squared minus 13b plus 10. Okay, and then we have one last example. You don't need to do part D, that's okay. So for C, let's use FOIL method again. First, outer, inner, last. So your first term would be x times 2x, so 2x squared. Your outer term would be x times negative 1, so negative x. Your inner terms would be 4 times 2x, which is 8x. And your last term would be 4 times negative 1, so minus 4. If you do negative, make sure you include the negative sign in front. Negative 1 plus 8 is 7x. So then you have 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. So there is the answer. The exit ticket is in Polaris. So please complete the 8.2 exit ticket. You have multiple attempts at it. It is a product grade worth 2 points. Then once you're done with that, then you can work on the 8.2 Edulastic homework due tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.